Hello, in this video, we're going to be talking about the thoracic cage. Let's not waste any of your time. Let's get right to it. Now, when we're talking thoracic cage, obviously the one thing we want to emphasize early on is we're going to be talking about something like, the police or some military person would call, the vest or the jacket, that thing that wraps around your upper body that protects you. Okay, so we're going all the way around, as you know, we got from our sternum all the way around to the vertebrae. Both the sternum and the vertebrae connect, the two halves, with the idea of trying to provide some form of protection, although it does have its limits. Car crashes, violent collisions of some sort, football games, you always can see or hear about cracked ribs, broken ribs, things like that, and of course serious accidents where a vertebrae is damaged obviously can lead to pretty severe results. But that's the area we're talking about. So we're talking, as I just mentioned, starting from the front, that sternum, through the ribs, and I'm showing you this, but it's below the camera, so I'm going to quit doing that, and around to the vertebrae, with the idea of providing some protection for those organs that are inside there, the heart, lungs, things like that. And of course, it's, if you took it, and well, obviously we'll do this in class, but if you have that combination of the vertebrae, the ribs, and the sternum, and you held it up, it's a tube of some sort, kind of enclosed at the top and very open and broad at the bottom. Now, and this is not new information to you, but you can physically see it as you breathe, your chest rising and falling, and the ribs rising and falling. And from a logical standpoint, that may not make sense. I mean, we know that it happens, so we just accept it. But if we don't really think about it, the evidence of there must be something else going on for that to happen. Because if they were truly just bones that were fixed in their structure, then our lungs and everything just kind of pressed against them, and we'd obviously would feel that, and certainly don't want that. So that tells us that there's something else going on with this structure. And you can see the white in the picture to the beside me there. That's cartilage and tendon and stuff. And what that allows it to do, that allows the expansion. It's not a hard, fast, matter, material. So it does allow it to expand, to fit rhythmically with the breathing pattern. And again, all these little parts, I know those words are kind of hard to, they're not kind of hard to see, they are hard to see. But they'll be in a PowerPoint, they'll be in your textbook certainly, and we'll deal with those in those individual day 2 labs, day 2 activities, to where we just have the models of the bones. We won't have actual bones, and we'll have models of the bones out, and we'll be talking about the various aspects. All right, as we look at the individual parts, and I say look at it, this didn't have a picture in the PowerPoint or the book to use, so we'll just talk about this, and I'll set up as high as I can but you'll know where I'm kind of pointing to. So we're starting off with the sternum. That's that bone right in front there, the sternum, and it has 3 parts. The mandible, which is the very, very top. So if you just kind of start with your neck, there's nothing there, and then you get to right in there, and you can feel it change from those 2 bones coming together there. Okay, the clavicle is right there. But right below that, you can feel it really get hard and solid. That's the top of the manubrium, and it's not very long, a couple of inches there. And then you'll get into the rest of it, which we will talk about on the next screen. But you can kind of feel where it all comes together. Like I said, the clavicle is right there. And if you go out far enough, then you can feel ribs coming around and everything. And then, of course, right below the manubrium is the body, and the bottom's the longest part. It's like the manubrium is an inch or so at the top, and then the xiphoid is the very, very tip, and then the body is the rest of that. So about 3 or 4 inches perhaps in there. It's the body. It's the longest part. It's certainly big and thick and wide, and it's the body part. If you've ever taken a CPR course, okay, and you're doing the chest compressions, that's the part that you're looking to be on. That's the strongest part of all that. And at the very bottom, and you can kind of just, if you go all the way down, and you feel the rib cage right here, that very bottom part of that's the xiphoid. And its claim to fame is that that's where some of the abdominal muscles attached to be incorporated, for their strength, for their attachment point. So that's the 3 parts: the manubrium at the very top, the body, the solid big part of it, length part of it, and of course the xiphoid down there at the very, very bottom. Okay, now as we start talking about ribs, 12 pairs of ribs, okay, no differences between genders or anything like that. 12 pairs, but they're not all the same type of rib. As you know, you got your true ribs, you got your false ribs. But again, as we mentioned, here in the front, as it comes off of the sternum, it's interesting. I started a sentence, but I'm going to come back to that. You think about your sternum and you think about your vertebrae. Obviously, your vertebrae goes all the way down the length of your back and to the pelvic girdle. But the sternum stops right here. So it kind of gives... So the true ribs, as we're going to be talking about here in a second, kind of fit into that area. And again, I'm showing you on my shirt here, but you can't see it anyway. But we'll talk about it in class. Through this rib where the sternum reaches down to, those are where your true ribs are going to be. And then below that, as you can still feel ribs down there, that's where the false ribs are going to be. And of course, get way back here, the floating ribs back here, all designed to kind of be protection. But as we saw in the picture, the things coming off the sternum, that's where that cartilage is, which allows it to expand and contrast with the breathing. But now as you look at the picture over there, we're going to talk about some of the parts. The part coming off of the vertebrae, so we're talking in the back, okay, that's the head part. That's the part to the top of that diagram over there at the very top. That's the head part. And if you look real closely, if you look at a picture in the book or in the PowerPoint, you'll see some faucets there. Remember we talked about faucets being cartilage-like, and almost like the nose pieces that I mentioned last time, where they're designed to be up against bone and allows to have that cushion to keep from having a bone-on-bone experience, which sounds cool, but is not cool. Not cool at all. That's where the head is. So it's up against the vertebrae, and it's designed to be able to be attached there to that and give it some of that flexibility. And of course, we know well, I won't get ahead of myself. Let's just wait till it comes up on the screen here before I start talking about it. Alright, and the neck part is right below that. It only makes sense if you got the head, then the neck would be right below that. So just right off of the front inch of the rib, that's where the neck's going to be. And then down below there, tubercle, you can see that up there. And again, pretty small, but look at it in other ways, PowerPoint book, whatever you want to do there. But a tubercle is designed, again, it's a faucet. Okay, so not the kind you turn on water. It's this kind of faucet, F-A-C-E-T, but it's designed to kind of be able to set on the outer part of there, with the extension of that vertebrae. Again, so there's no rubbing involved, no bone on bone situation to keep it from wearing out. And of course, then you got the angle where it's because they are how they are shaped. If you just take one and kind of hold it up, be kind of in the same as shape of your jawline would be. That's where you'd find the angle. And of course, in the shaft on the other side, and the shaft is what leads up to the sternum. Of course, as you know from our picture, we saw there's 2 or 3, 4 inches of that cartilage in there that attaches to that and allows it to, again, do that expansion that we talked about. Alright, this picture, again, you can see the 2 attachment points are different, or I should say 2 angles of the attachment point off the vertebrae. So you can see the faucets there, the head as it's up against the vertebrae. You'll notice that it does not attach, it does not touch or connected to the portion where it is up against the solid bone part of the vertebrae, but it's coming off of the disc, the intercostal disc is there. More cartilage off of that. And if you see the top view, you can see again, kind of fits right inside that process there, and it attaches right there with the head and the neck. Alright, and I kind of alluded to this rib part. So the TF, that doesn't stand for true or false. Well, I guess it does stand for true or false. Not the kind of way you think of as in a quiz question or a test question, but true ribs or false ribs. The true ribs are the 1 through 7, and again, those are pretty easy to discern. Basically, where the sternum ends, because it has to attach there, that's kind of where the true ribs end. So if you just started counting, get up here high enough, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the false rib down below. Okay, obviously the true rib is connected both front and back to the sternum and to the vertebrae. To the vertebrae off the disc, as we just saw, and to the sternum with the cartilage, at the end or up against the sternum part. The false ribs, however, do not attach to both directly. They are attached indirectly, but not directly. And again, the reason why they're called false ribs is because they don't have a direct line to the sternum. You can see in that diagram beside me where the bottom one that's connected to the sternum, right above the xiphoid, that would be number 7, and then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They have this cartilage. They have a connection to the sternum, but they go up through and merge with 7. They kind of get on the 7's pathway to the sternum. So that's why they're called false ribs. Alright, now for the false ribs, or the floating ribs, I should say, not the false ribs, but the floating ribs. These are 2 ribs, one on each side, or I shouldn't say one on each side, 11 and 12 on a particular side, and they're only attached in the back. They're kind of like, I mentioned a flap jacket or a bulletproof vest kind of a thing, but some of the vests that football players wear underneath their pads not only has the jacket part that you can close and connect, but then they've got like a little belt that hangs down from it to kind of protect that lower part of the ribs, and those are kind of like floating ribs. They're not attached in the front like the flap jacket or the vest is, but they just kind of come around for protection. Now you probably can connect them to something or tie them in the front to keep that protection, but floating ribs are not attached in the front. All right, next up for us, we're going to be in a series of individual scenarios. The pelvic girdle. Pelvic girdle. We understand pectoral girdle. We understand the pelvic girdle and what it does, but the pectoral girdle, you got to think of the girdle as something that catches, kind of like when we look at our pelvic girdle, you're going to see that it kind of just holds, it's kind of like bowl shape. It kind of holds everything up in there. The pectoral girdle, again, it does hold things, but it's kind of upside down. If you flipped it, it'd give you more of that bowl type shape. But the pectoral girdle, as you can see there on the screen, consists of the clavicle, which is here in the front. You can see that. And the scapula here in the back that you obviously can feel that, when you're just looking at it, it looks like a big pig's ear. Or when you go to if you go to a pet store and get what they call a pig's ear for a dog or an animal to chew on, it looks very similar to a scapula. And the reason why it looks very similar to a scapula because that's what it is. So, but that's the idea of the pectoral girdle. Now, next up, the clavicle, and again, this is one that you can feel right here in the front, the connection point back here on the shoulder, the connection point up here to the front to the top of the sternum. Okay, so you can kind of really feel those, and we'll talk about the sternal end, the acromial end when we have them in class. But these are two very ordinary looking type bones, but one of the ways that you can think of it as far as which end is which end, obviously if you're looking at the picture, the faucet end, the sacral, see, very straight back here, somewhat straight, and it kind of just curves up here. You can kind of see which parts those might be, but the sternal end is kind of a rounded, so it's going to be more of a up against something. The acromial end, more of a flattened, and you can tell the two apart because what it looks like, you got that curve going, and then boom, it takes a dramatic right turn for the last couple of inches. If you find that, you've got the acromial end. Alright, the scapula. Again, that's the part in the back where it's got all kinds of attachment points for muscles and other things. And of course, it's got the side, got angles, it's got all kinds of things to talk about and look at as we are in class. But anyway, that's what allows your shoulder to go up and down. You can kind of really feel that. Alright, again, the scapula, again, all kinds of parts, and there's a picture on the next screen, but there was just so much information I couldn't squeeze it in there. And we will certainly be taking those and talking about all those individual parts. But what we want to, so let's just go ahead and go to it. We want to make sure that when we're in class, that we talk about it, just the different processes, different notches. And we want to certainly recognize the sides, which is the front, which is the back. Of course, anterior would be the front. So when you're looking at a scapula, if you're just looking at a little bitty thing in the upper corner, that's going to be the anterior, the front view. If you're looking at the back side and get that long spine going across the top, that is going to be the posterior or the back view. Well, that's our video over thoracic cage number 1. When we come back here next time, we're looking at thoracic cage number 2. We'll see you then.